My daughter keeps taking my money to win the favor of a wealthy woman. My name is Margaret Whitmore. My life has been shaped by years of sacrifice, patience, and the kind of love only a mother can give. But sometimes love blinds us to the truth that the people we hold dearest can wound us more deeply than any stranger. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. The first time it happened, I told myself it was an accident, a missing $40 from my purse. I brushed it off thinking I must have forgotten about a grocery run or perhaps slipped a bill out of my wallet and lost it in the folds of my coat. I've always been forgetful with small things like that, and the idea of accusing my daughter Emily felt cruel, like an ugly shadow I wasn't willing to cast on her. But then, a week later, it wasn't 40. It was 200, and it was gone not from my purse but from the savings account I've carefully tended since my retirement. That account wasn't just numbers on a screen, it was my safety net, my peace of mind, the thing that made me feel secure in my modest life. And the withdrawal wasn't a bank error. It was Emily. When I asked her about it, she didn't even flinch. "Mom, it's no big deal," she said, flipping her hair over her shoulder like she was brushing off dust. "I needed it for something important. You'll understand later." Her voice was casual light, almost dismissive. It struck me like a slap. I had raised Emily to respect honesty, to value trust, to know the difference between need and greed. And here she was treating my years of labor and careful saving as though they were her personal wallet. "What was it for?" I asked quietly, trying to keep my voice from trembling. She smirked. "Networking." I blinked. "Networking?" "Yes. I've been spending time with Mrs. Catherine Aldridge." She explained the name rolling off her tongue like it was precious. "She's influential. She knows everyone who matters in this town. If she likes me, doors will open, real doors, Mom. You just don't get it." Catherine Aldridge. I had heard the name before. A wealthy widow who had built her fortune in real estate, admired by some, envied by others. She lived in the grand house at the edge of our town, the kind of house with gates, manicured lawns, and rooms so polished they smelled like untouched museums. And my Emily. She was convinced proximity to this woman would transform her life. But my stomach tightened. "And you used my money to what by her attention?" Emily rolled her eyes. "It's not like that. But she hosts luncheons, charity drives, dinners. Do you think I can show up empty-handed? Do you think she'll take me seriously if I don't fit into her world?" "Mom, it's an investment in the future." I wanted to scream. Investment. That was my retirement, my food, my heating bills in the dead of winter. I had spent decades grading papers late at night, skipping vacations and putting away what I could for security. And she had the audacity to call it an investment for herself. But I swallowed my fury. I told myself maybe she was right, that maybe this was a phase of ambition and naivety. Maybe she'd see the truth once she realized wealthy women don't hand out real opportunities like party favors. Still, that night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, something gnawed at me. It wasn't just the missing money. It was her attitude. The way she looked at me like I was a relic from a forgotten age, someone whose concerns were irrelevant. I used to be her safe place. Now I felt like an obstacle she had to push past. The next week, the pattern repeated. She didn't even ask. I checked my account and found another withdrawal, this time $400. My hands shook as I logged in, staring at the bold red numbers. My savings slowly bleeding out, one transaction at a time. I confronted her again. "Emily, this stops now." She laughed. Laughed. "Mom, don't be so dramatic. Do you want me to waste away in obscurity? Do you want me to miss the chance to be someone?" Her words cut me deeper than any theft could. As though my life, the life of a schoolteacher who had lived quietly and without luxury, was something worthless. As though sacrifice and integrity meant nothing in the face of social status. That was the moment I realized it wasn't just about money. It was about the kind of person my daughter was becoming, and it terrified me. I started watching her more closely. The way she dressed, the way she spoke, even the way she scrolled endlessly on her phone. She was mimicking Catherine, her tone, her style, her way of looking down at people. Emily wasn't just taking my money. She was slowly shedding herself to become someone else's shadow. And I couldn't help but wonder how much more would she take before she saw me not as her mother, but as her bank account. The fear was real. The betrayal was undeniable. But deep down, another seed was beginning to grow in me. A darker one. A voice that whispered, "If she's playing a game, maybe it's time you learn how to play it better than she does." At that moment, I didn't know how far things would go. But I sensed the storm was only beginning, and I would be the one left standing in the wreckage unless I found a way to fight back. Emily's justifications came wrapped in confidence, as if her logic were unshakable, as if I were the one who needed convincing, rather than she being the one caught red-handed. I still remember the way she stood in the kitchen that morning, hips leaned against the counter, coffee mug in her hand, her eyes rolling every time I questioned her. I had just confronted her about the missing $400, and instead of guilt, there was only arrogance. "Mom," she sighed as though I were a child interrupting her plans. "You don't understand how the world works anymore. People like Catherine Aldridge, women with influence, they don't just hand out opportunities. You have to earn their attention. You have to show them you belong in their circle. And you think belonging means draining my savings." My voice cracked despite my effort to stay calm. Emily shrugged, sipping her coffee. Her nails painted a glossy red I knew hadn't come cheap. "It's not draining, Mom. It's investing. Catherine noticed me at the last luncheon because I brought a donation check. Do you know how many other girls were there desperate for her attention? She chose to sit with me. Me. That means something. And with your help, I can keep building that relationship." Her words sank into me like ice water. With my help. As if my decades of work, my sacrifice were hers to redirect for her social climbing. "Emily, I've saved that money my entire life," I reminded her. "It's not endless. It's not for Catherine. It's for security. For emergencies." She smirked, leaning closer as though sharing a secret. "This is an emergency, Mom. An opportunity like this doesn't come twice. Once she sees me as her protégé, doors will open. And guess what? You'll benefit too. You won't be living small anymore." There it was, the dagger twisted in my chest. The way she said small, like my quiet, careful life, was something shameful. I wanted to shout, to tell her she was being used, manipulated, drawn into a world where she would always be the servant, never the equal. But looking at her eyes bright with conviction, I knew reason wouldn't touch her. Emily had built her dream around Catherine, and she was determined to feed it no matter the cost. That evening, when she breezed out the door in a new dress, silk, no doubt, with tags I couldn't afford. Even when I worked full-time, I sat in the dim living room, my hands clasped in my lap. My mind replayed her words, "With your help. With your help." The truth was, it hadn't been a question. She had decided my savings were hers to use, and I had allowed it by not drawing the line hard enough. I started keeping a notebook. Each withdrawal, each favor she claimed she needed, documented in my careful handwriting. I wasn't ready to confront her with it yet. Not then. But something told me I would need a record. Days turned into weeks. Emily's world shifted around Catherine's orbit. She came home late, her perfume rich and cloying, her conversations peppered with names I didn't recognize, people who, according to her, could change everything. Every story began with Catherine and ended with Catherine, as though she were the sun and Emily, the desperate planet clinging to her light. And always there were the withdrawals. A donation to a charity Catherine supported. A contribution to cover an event. New dresses, manicures, jewelry necessary, Emily claimed, because appearances matter when you're networking. The word networking became like poison in my ears. One Saturday morning, I decided to test her. I made pancakes her childhood favorite and waited until she sat down. I placed the plate in front of her hot, golden drizzled with syrup. She smiled, surprised, but then I slid an envelope across the table. "What's this?" she asked. $200, I said evenly. "I want you to use it wisely. Not for Catherine, not for events, for yourself." Her face twisted. She laughed sharp and humorless. "Mom, you don't get it. Spending it on Catherine is for myself. You think I'm just buying her friendship? No, I'm buying a future." Her voice rose with each word, anger spilling into the quiet morning. "And you'd rather I would stay here in this dying town rot away like you did?" "Sorry, Mom, I want more." The words stabbed deeper than any theft ever could. "Rot away like you did." She saw my life as nothing. My years of teaching, of pouring knowledge into children who would carry it forward, meant nothing to her. I wanted to tell her that dignity mattered more than connections, that self-respect was worth more than money. But as I watched her shove the envelope back toward me, her lips pressed tight in defiance, I realized she wasn't listening. She was already gone, mentally, emotionally chasing Catherine's approval. That night, alone in bed, I thought about my late husband. He had passed when Emily was only 12, leaving me to raise her alone. I remembered how he used to say, "She's going to be strong, Margaret. Fierce. Just like you." But fierce had turned into selfish. Strong had twisted into entitled. And somehow, without me noticing, she had grown into a woman who looked at me not as a mother, but as a resource. I cried quietly, the kind of tears you hide from the world, tears that soak into the pillow while you pray for answers. Yet beneath the pain, there was something else, a whisper in my mind. "You can't let this continue. If she won't stop herself, you'll have to stop her." The next morning, Emily left early again. I walked into her room, guilt tugging at me, but I searched anyway. Drawers, purses, her desk. That's when I found the handwritten note scribbles on expensive stationery, Catherine's signature at the bottom. Emily had tucked them into a shoebox like trophies. One line caught my eye. "It's impressive what lengths you're willing to go, Emily. Ambition always pays off when properly directed." My stomach churned. Catherine wasn't just accepting Emily's gifts. She was feeding the fire, encouraging it, grooming her into a willing pawn. I sat on the edge of Emily's bed, the note trembling in my hand. My daughter was blind, so blinded by her hunger for approval that she couldn't see she was being used. That night when she returned, I tried one more time. "Emily," I said softly, "don't you see what's happening? She's not your friend. She's using you." Emily froze, her eyes narrowing. "Don't talk about her like that. You don't know her." "I know manipulation when I see it. I was a teacher for 30 years. I know when someone is pulling strings." Her voice broke into a shout. "You're just jealous because she sees something in me you never did." And with that, she stormed upstairs, slamming the door, leaving me shaking in the silence. I sat there staring at the shadows on the wall, my chest heavy. Something had shifted irrevocably. This wasn't just a phase. This was war between the mother who wanted to save her daughter and the daughter who was willing to sacrifice her mother's blood for a stranger's favor. And deep down, I knew. The battle had only begun. Patterns are dangerous things. At first, they creep in quietly, disguised as coincidence. A missing bill here, a favor there. But once you step back far enough, the picture sharpens and the truth becomes undeniable. What you hoped was temporary is actually the new reality. That's what happened with Emily. It didn't take long before the withdrawals from my account became as regular as the sunrise. First small 200, 400, then larger, bolder, like she had tested the waters and found them safe. Within weeks, I no longer asked myself if money would vanish, but how much this time. I'd log into my account and see the red numbers blinking at me. 600 gone for donations. 800 for a charity auction. 1,000 for a weekend retreat with Catherine and her circle. My stomach would clench every time, a mix of fury and fear. When I confronted Emily, she acted as though I were nagging her over crumbs. Mom, stop obsessing over numbers. Money comes and goes. What I'm doing is building connections that last forever. Forever. That word left a bitter taste. How could forever be built on someone else's sacrifice? It wasn't just the money. It was the way she had begun to treat me like an obstacle rather than a parent. Her tone shifted. Her words sharpened. She moved through the house with a sense of ownership, as though I were a guest in my own home. One evening, she came home from a dinner hosted by Catherine. She was glowing, laughing, flushed, her eyes sparkling with triumph. She dropped her clutch on the table and kicked off her heels, humming to herself. "What happened tonight?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. She introduced me to people. Emily said, her grin wide. Real people, investors, lawyers. She called me charming in front of everyone. "Do you know what that means, Mom? Do you have any idea how close I am to making it?" "And what did it cost this time?" I asked quietly. Her grin faltered. "Why do you always have to ruin it? It's not about cost. It's about image. You wouldn't understand. You've never lived in that world." Her words struck like arrows. No, I hadn't lived in Catherine's world of glittering houses and endless champagne. But I had lived in the real world, the one where bills needed paying, where savings meant survival, where love wasn't measured by gifts or donations. That night, after she went upstairs, I sat alone in the darkened living room. I stared at the family photo on the mantel, Emily at 8 years old, gap-toothed, and smiling, her arms around my waist. Back then, she'd said, "You're the best mom in the world." Now I wasn't sure I even ranked in her top 10. The pattern deepened. I noticed she no longer talked to me about ordinary things. No more asking how my day was, no more laughter over silly television shows. Every word was Catherine. Every sentence began and ended with her name. She told me my dress was elegant. She said she sees potential in me. She thinks I could really go places. It was like watching a slow possession. My daughter was disappearing, replaced by a desperate reflection of a wealthy woman's approval. I started noticing changes in her habits, too. She used words I'd never heard her use before, phrases Catherine was known for. She carried herself differently, shoulders squared, chin high, like a queen addressing her subject. Even the way she laughed felt rehearsed, borrowed. And always, always, she reached for my money to fuel the transformation. One afternoon, while she was out, I opened her laptop. I hesitated. Invading her privacy felt wrong. But what she had done to me already wasn't just invasion, it was theft, betrayal. I justified my actions with that thought. What I found left me both heartbroken and furious. Dozens of receipts for online purchases, designer shoes, handbags, jewelry, all under my credit card. Thousands of dollars. Each item carefully selected not for her needs, but to mirror Catherine's style. Worse were the messages. Emails to Catherine gushing about her generosity, thanking her for guidance. Promises to always be useful if given the chance. And then Catherine's replies, smooth, manipulative, each one a thread tightening around Emily's neck. "It's admirable how devoted you are. Not many young women have the courage to sacrifice so much. Keep proving yourself, and maybe you'll be more than just another face." I shut the laptop, my hands trembling. Emily wasn't just wasting my money. She was being led into a trap, and she was too blinded by ambition to see it. The worst part, she didn't even hide it anymore. A few nights later, she came home with a shopping bag. She pulled out a silk scarf, its brand logo screaming luxury. She twirled it in the air like a trophy. "Catherine loved it when I wore this," she bragged. She said I looked like I belonged. "And what did it cost?" I asked again. She smirked. 200. "Don't look at me like that, it was worth it." Worth it to who? To you? To her? My voice shook with anger. Her expression hardened. Worth it to us, Mom? Because when I get into her circle, it's not just my win, it's ours. Don't you want better than this small, sad life? There it was again, that dagger. Small, sad life. I stood in the kitchen staring at her. For a moment, I didn't recognize her at all. This wasn't the child I'd raised, the girl who once cried when she broke her favorite toy, who once held my hand walking to school. This was someone else. Someone colder. Someone who valued me only for what I could give her. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she remembered who she was. But instead, I whispered, "Emily, you're losing yourself." She rolled her eyes and walked past me, her scarf trailing behind like a banner of victory. That night, I pulled out my notebook. I wrote down everything, the dates, the amounts, the purchases, a list of every betrayal. My hand cramped from the writing, but I didn't stop. Because I knew one day she'd force me to show her just how much she'd taken, not just in money, but in dignity. And yet, part of me clung to hope. Hope that maybe she'd wake up on her own, that maybe one day she'd look at me and realize what she had done. But deep down, I already knew. Hope was a luxury I could no longer afford. The pattern wasn't slowing, it was accelerating. And if I didn't find a way to break it, she would drain not just my savings, but everything I had left. It was a Sunday afternoon when Emily announced with an excitement that almost masked her arrogance, "Mom, you're coming with me tonight." I looked up from the newspaper in my lap. "Coming where? To Catherine's dinner. She wants to meet you." My heart lurched. For weeks, I had heard nothing but Catherine's name spoken with reverence, worship even. Now suddenly, I was invited into that world. My instincts whispered there was more to this than generosity. Emily twirled in front of the mirror, smoothing the fabric of her navy blue dress, her lipstick a deep crimson. "She thinks it would be charming to meet my mother." "Don't embarrass me, okay?" The words stung, but I kept my composure. "And why would I embarrass you?" Her eyes flicked toward my sweater and faded jeans. "Because you don't understand her world. Just wear something decent. Please." I nodded, hiding the ache her words left. She didn't see me as a woman of wisdom or dignity. She saw me as a liability. That evening, I dressed in my best outfit, an emerald green dress I had worn to Emily's graduation years ago. It wasn't new, but it was elegant, and I walked into Catherine Aldridge's mansion with my head held high. The house itself was a spectacle. Marble floors gleamed under chandeliers, portraits lined the walls, and the air smelled faintly of roses and money. Guests floated from room to room, laughter clinking against crystal glasses. And then she appeared. Catherine Aldridge, tall, poised, with silver-streaked hair pulled into an immaculate chignon. Her gown shimmered with understated wealth, the kind that spoke of confidence rather than desperation. She carried herself with the grace of someone who had been admired her entire life. "Emily, darling," she cooed, kissing my daughter on the cheek. Then her eyes slid to me, cool and assessing. "And this must be your mother." I extended my hand. "Margaret Whitmore. It's a pleasure." Her smile was polite, but her grip light, like holding air. "The pleasure is mine." Yet even in that moment I saw it. The flicker in her eyes, the calculation. This wasn't kindness. This was curiosity. She wanted to see the source of Emily's sacrifices, the woman funding her protégé's desperate climb. We sat at a long dining table covered in fine china and silverware. Conversation sparkled around me. Words of investments, vacations in Europe, art auctions. I sat quietly, sipping my water, letting the waves wash over me. Catherine glanced at me once, her lips curving. "Emily tells me you're retired. A teacher, was it?" "Yes," I said simply. 30 years. "How noble," she said, though her tone carried no warmth. "The world needs teachers, though. I imagine the pay isn't much." The jab was subtle, but I felt it pierce. Emily laughed too quickly, nervously. "That's why she's so careful with her savings." Catherine's gaze sharpened for just a second like a predator scenting prey. Then she turned the conversation back to her guests, leaving me both dismissed and dissected in a single glance. As the evening went on, I watched Emily orbit her glowing whenever Catherine acknowledged her. She laughed at her jokes, refilled her glass before it was empty, even adjusted her scarf when it slipped off her shoulder. The devotion was painful to watch. At one point, Catherine beckoned Emily closer. "My dear, would you mind fetching that portfolio from the study?" "Of course," Emily said eagerly, disappearing down the hall. That left me alone with Catherine. She sipped her wine, then looked at me with a smile that never reached her eyes. "You've raised a very ambitious daughter." I forced a smile. "Yes, she's determined." "Ambition is admirable," Catherine said, setting down her glass. "But it requires resources. You understand, don't you?" Her words were smooth, but beneath them lay the truth she knew. She knew Emily was siphoning my money to fuel this so-called ambition, and she approved. "I understand the value of hard work," I replied carefully. Her smile deepened, though it felt more like a challenge. "Hard work, yes. But sometimes opportunity requires sacrifice." Sacrifice. The word throbbed in my chest. Whose sacrifice? Mine. Before I could respond, Emily returned, beaming, clutching the portfolio like it was treasure. Catherine patted her hand, her voice honeyed. "See, reliable. That's why I like her." Like her. Not respect. Not value. Like. As one likes a useful tool. The rest of the dinner blurred into laughter and wine, but I sat in silence watching learning. By the time we left, my conclusion was clear. Catherine had no intention of making Emily her equal. She was grooming her, using her, molding her into a servant who mistook obedience for opportunity. In the car, Emily gushed. "Did you see how she looked at me?" "She trusts me, Mom." "She really does." I stared out the window, the night sky spinning past. "Emily, she doesn't see you as a friend. She sees you as—" I hesitated, not wanting to crush her. "A helper. Someone convenient." Emily's smile faltered, then hardened. "You don't know her like I do. She believes in me." "No, Emily," I whispered. "She believes in what you can give her." Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You're just jealous." "Jealous because she sees potential in me." The words sliced through me like a knife. Jealous. Was that truly what she thought? We drove the rest of the way in silence, the distance between us growing wider with every mile. When we got home, she stormed to her room, slamming the door. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the dim glow of the streetlight through the curtains. My heart ached with the weight of truth. My daughter wasn't just being used. She was willing to be used if it meant sitting closer to wealth. That night, as I crawled into bed, one thought echoed in my mind. If Catherine was the queen, Emily had chosen to be her pawn. And pawns are always the first to be sacrificed. I closed my eyes, but sleep never came. Instead, I made a quiet vow in the dark. I would not allow Catherine or my own daughter's blindness to strip me of everything I had built. Because if Emily couldn't see the truth, then it would fall on me to open her eyes, even if it broke both our hearts. The morning after Catherine's dinner, the house felt colder. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the silence that lingered after too many words left unspoken. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee cooling untouched, staring at the sunlight crawling across the floor. Emily swept in wearing a silk robe, another new one, of course. Her phone was glued to her hand, her lips curved in a smug smile as she scrolled through photos from last night. Catherine commented on my picture, she announced like it was breaking news. She said I looked radiant. I forced a thin smile. And how much did that radiance cost me this time? Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Do you have to ruin everything? Can't you just be happy for me for once?" I set my mug down. The clink echoed louder than I intended. "Emily, I've been watching for weeks. The withdrawals, the purchases, the way you run every decision through what Catherine might think. This isn't ambition anymore. This is obsession. She rolled her eyes and stood straighter like a queen addressing her servant. You don't get it. You never have. She sees something in me, Mom. Something you've always been too small-minded to understand. Small-minded. The words hit hard. I clenched my fists beneath the table, struggling to keep my composure. Emily, what I understand is that you're letting someone else control you. She isn't lifting you up, she's pulling you in. And you're draining my life savings to play her game. Her laugh was sharp, brittle. Your life savings? What were you going to do with it anyway? Sit on it until you die. At least I'm using it for something that matters. My chest tightened. 30 years of sacrifice, of scraping by on a teacher's salary, of skipping vacations and dinners out, all dismissed in one sentence. It matters to me, I whispered. Emily leaned across the table, her eyes flashing. You're just scared because I'm becoming more than you ever were. Catherine says I have potential. She says I could go places. And what has she given you, Emily? I asked, my voice trembling with restrained fury. What doors has she opened? Has she offered you a job? A contract? A partnership? Or just compliments that keep you running back with gifts? For the first time, her face faltered, but only for a moment. She straightened, her chin lifting. You wouldn't understand. You've lived your whole life in mediocrity. I refused to do the same. It was like a knife to the chest. Mediocrity. My years shaping young minds, my sacrifices to keep her clothed, fed, educated, all dismissed as nothing. I stood slowly, my chair scraping the floor. Emily, I love you, but I won't let you destroy both of us chasing someone else's approval. Her lip curled. So you're going to cut me off. Hold me back because you're too afraid of success. Typical. Her words twisted like barbed wire around my heart. Typical. As though all my efforts had been predictable failures, as though I had never been enough in her eyes. Emily, this isn't about holding you back, I said quietly. It's about protecting you from Catherine and from yourself. She scoffed, turning toward the stairs. Don't bother. If you won't help me, I'll find someone who will. I froze, the threat hanging heavy in the air. Someone else. Who? Another person to exploit her desperation. Another manipulator waiting in the wings. I swallowed hard, fighting the sting in my eyes. Emily, please. But she was already gone, her footsteps pounding up the stairs, her door slamming like a final verdict. I sank back into my chair, my body trembling. The house felt cavernous, the silence suffocating. I pressed my hands to my face, tears spilling between my fingers. What hurt most wasn't the money, it was her contempt. The way she looked at me like I was nothing more than a barrier in her path. All night her words echoed in my mind. Mediocrity. Typical. Holding me back. By morning, something inside me had shifted. The pain hadn't lessened, but it had hardened into resolve. If Emily wanted to turn this into a battle, then I would fight not with screams or accusations, but with patience and proof. I began to prepare, quietly, methodically. I called the bank and froze my accounts, transferring what remained into a separate one under stricter controls. I locked away my checkbook, changed my passwords, and cut off the credit card she had been using. The next time she tried, she'd find nothing. But I didn't tell her. Not yet. I wanted to see what she'd do when the well dried up. A week later, the storm came. She burst into the kitchen, her phone clutched like a weapon. Mom, what happened? My card was declined at the boutique. I looked up from the newspaper, calm, though my heart pounded. I closed the account. Her face contorted, rage spilling out in waves. You what? How dare you? Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Catherine was there, and I looked like a fool. I met her fury with steady eyes. Better to look like a fool than to be won. Her breath caught her fists, trembling at her sides. You're ruining everything. Everything I've worked for. What have you worked for, Emily? Buying dresses. Hosting dinners you can't afford. chasing scraps of attention from a woman who will never see you as her equal. Her eyes filled with tears, but not of sorrow, of rage. You don't know her. She believes in me. No, Emily, I said softly. She believes in what you can give her. And the moment you can't, she'll cast you aside. She shook her head violently, storming toward the door. You're toxic. You've always been jealous of me. The words sliced deeper than I expected. Jealous of my own child, of her hollow victories. The door slammed behind her, leaving the house trembling. I stood in the silence, my heart heavy, but my resolve firm. She thought she could break me with words, but she didn't know the truth. I had lived my whole life on sacrifice, and sacrifice had taught me one thing: strength isn't always loud. Sometimes strength is in the silence of waiting. And so I waited. I waited to see how far she would go when she realized the money was gone. Because sooner or later she would learn the truth about Catherine. And when that day came, I would be ready with proof, with records, with the truth she refused to see. For now, I sat at the kitchen table, folded my hands, and whispered a prayer into the still air. God, don't let her destroy herself before she learns. There are moments in life when you see the divide between yourself and someone you love so clearly it almost feels like a canyon carved overnight. For me, that canyon opened wide at Catherine Aldridge's charity gala. Emily had begged me to attend. It'll be good for you, Mom, she insisted, her smile sharp as a blade. Besides, Catherine likes when families show support. It'll make me look even more dedicated. I hesitated, but in the end, I agreed. Perhaps some part of me hoped that being there, seeing the spectacle firsthand, would help me better understand this world Emily was selling herself to. The event was hosted at one of the most lavish country clubs in the state. The moment I walked in, I felt out of place. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, violins played softly in the corner, and servers glided by with trays of champagne. The air smelled faintly of roses and polished silver. Emily dazzled in a sequined gown, her hair swept into a glossy bun. She looked radiant, but I couldn't help noticing the tension in her smile, the way she kept glancing around, seeking approval with every laugh, every gesture. And then, like clockwork, she found her moment. As the auctioneer announced a round of bidding for a local children's hospital, Emily's hand shot up. $5,000, she declared, her voice clear and bold. The room went still for a moment, then filled with murmurs of admiration. How generous, someone whispered. My heart stopped. 5,000, I knew Emily didn't have that kind of money. She had always relied on my accounts, and though I had locked them recently, I suspected she had already made arrangements before I pulled the plug. Catherine, sitting nearby, leaned in with a smile that was equal parts praise and calculation. Well done, Emily. That kind of generosity doesn't go unnoticed. Emily beamed, her cheeks flushed with pride. She looked like she had won a crown. But my stomach churned. Because I knew where that money had come from. My savings. My blood and sweat. 30 years of late nights and sacrificed luxuries, all reduced to a number tossed into the air for applause. The applause faded, and soon Emily was surrounded by admirers, each one congratulating her for her generous spirit. I sat at the edge of the room, invisible, my plain dress blending into the shadows. One woman approached me, her smile polite. You must be so proud of your daughter. Such generosity at her age. I forced a smile, but it felt brittle. Proud, no. I was sick. Sick at how my daughter's kindness had been twisted into performance. Sick at how my sacrifices had become her props. Later, as the gala continued, Emily introduced me to a group of guests. This is my mother, she said, her voice sweet but distant, like I was part of her display rather than her family. Catherine chimed in, her voice dripping with charm. Margaret, you've raised quite the remarkable young woman. Ambition, generosity, qualities not often found in one person. I smiled politely, but her words carried weight. Ambition and generosity, but not honesty, not gratitude. The humiliation deepened when dessert was served. I sat quietly at the long table surrounded by glittering gowns and tailored suits, while conversations flowed effortlessly around me. No one asked about my life, my work, my sacrifices. I was furniture a chair filled because Emily needed a mother at her side. Emily, on the other hand, sparkled. She laughed loudly at Catherine's jokes, leaned in close when men complimented her, and recounted her philanthropic spirit with dramatic flair. She was playing the role perfectly, and the crowd adored her. But the knife twisted deeper when I overheard her whisper to one woman, "It's not hard when you come from a family that values giving. My mother always taught me the importance of generosity." My chest tightened. My mother. Me. She was using my name, my values as a mask while bleeding me dry behind closed doors. The rest of the evening passed in a haze of shame and silence. By the time we returned home, I felt hollow. Emily kicked off her shoes, sighing happily. "Did you see their faces?" Mom Catherine said I was unforgettable tonight. I sat at the kitchen table staring at her. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" She blinked, feigning innocence. "What do you mean? $5,000, Emily. Do you know how long it takes to save that much on a teacher's salary?" Her expression hardened. "Stop acting like it's the end of the world. It was for a good cause. Besides, don't you want me to succeed?" Catherine said. Catherine said? I interrupted, my voice sharp. "Is that all you care about? What she says? What she thinks?" Emily's eyes flashed with anger. "Yes, because she matters, Mom. She's the kind of person who can change my life. Unlike you." The words were a slap harder than any physical blow. "Unlike you." I stared at her, my heart aching. "Emily, I have given you everything. My time, my money, my life, and still it isn't enough." Her jaw tightened. "It'll never be enough if you keep trying to hold me back." With that, she stormed upstairs, leaving me alone with the echo of her words. I sat there for a long time, the house silent around me. The humiliation from the gala mixed with the pain of her contempt, and I felt something inside me harden. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry, because I realized in that moment that Emily wasn't going to stop. She would keep taking, keep demanding until there was nothing left. And if I didn't find a way to protect myself, and maybe even protect her from herself, then I would lose everything. The humiliation of that night would not be forgotten. But perhaps I thought it could become the first step in turning the tables, because I wasn't just her mother anymore. I was becoming something else. Something she wouldn't see coming. It was a Tuesday morning when the truth finally began to surface. Emily had left in a rush, perfume lingering in the hallway like smoke, her heels clicking down the porch steps before the door slammed. I stood at the window watching her car disappear down the street, my heart heavy with exhaustion. I didn't plan to search her room, but when I passed by her door half open, I caught sight of a shoebox poking out from beneath her bed. Something about the way it was shoved there, careless as if hidden quickly, made me pause. For a moment I argued with myself. She was my daughter. What kind of mother goes rifling through her child's things? But then I remembered the gala. The applause, she had stolen the money. She had squandered the humiliation I had endured, while she basked in Catherine's approval. And I remembered her words. "It'll never be enough if you keep holding me back." With trembling hands, I pulled the box out. Inside were letters, dozens of them written on fine stationery, Catherine's elegant handwriting filling the pages. My breath caught as I unfolded the first. "Emily, it's admirable how far you're willing to go. Sacrifice separates those who want success from those who earn it." Another one read, "Most young women wouldn't have the courage to give so much of themselves. You're special. Remember, devotion always pays off." Each letter was the same, a mix of praise and subtle commands. Encouragement wrapped in manipulation like honey laced with poison. Catherine wasn't just accepting Emily's gifts, she was feeding the fire, convincing her that devotion meant sacrifice. At the bottom of the box were receipts, expensive dresses, jewelry, spa treatments, all signed on my account. But what chilled me most were the notes Emily had written in reply drafts she must have saved before sending. Anything you need, I'll provide. I want to prove myself to you no matter what it takes. My mother doesn't understand, but I won't let her stop me. I dropped the paper, my stomach twisting. My daughter wasn't just chasing Catherine's approval. She was offering herself, her loyalty, her very identity, as though Catherine were a queen and Emily her servant. I sat on the edge of the bed, the box on my lap, tears stinging my eyes. I thought of the little girl Emily used to be, the one who brought me dandelions from the yard and whispered, "I love you, Mommy, more than anyone." Where had that child gone? The front door creaked hours later as Emily returned. I quickly slid the box back under the bed, my heart pounding. She entered the kitchen, humming, her cheeks flushed from another afternoon in Catherine's world. "Mom, Catherine says I might be ready for something bigger," she said, pulling a bottle of sparkling water from the fridge. "She thinks I could help organize her next charity ball." "Do you know what that means?" I forced my voice to remain steady. "It means she's pulling you deeper into her games." Emily froze, narrowing her eyes. "Why do you always twist things?" "She believes in me. She believes in what you can give her." I shot back, unable to contain it this time. "I've seen the letters, Emily." Her face drained of color. "You went through my things." "Yes," I said firmly, "and I read every word. She's not mentoring you. She's manipulating you. And you're letting her." Her hands clenched around the bottle, her knuckles white. "You don't understand. She respects me. She sees something in me no one else does. Not even you." The words cut deep, but I pressed on. "Respect doesn't demand sacrifice. Respect doesn't drain your family dry. Emily, she's using you. And if you don't see that now, you'll see it when she casts you aside, the moment you're no longer useful." Tears welled in her eyes, but not of pain, of rage. "You're lying. You're jealous. You can't stand that someone finally sees my worth." I shook my head, my own tears spilling. "No, Emily. I see your worth. I've always seen it. But you're trading it for crumbs of attention." She shoved past me, her shoulder hard against mine, and stormed upstairs. The slam of her door rattled the house. I sat at the table, my body trembling. My heart broke for her blindness, but another part of me, the part that had been humiliated, dismissed, ignored, was hardening. I could no longer hope she would see the truth on her own. Hope was useless now. If she wouldn't open her eyes, I would have to open them for her. That night, I pulled out my notebook. I added the letters to my mental archive, each one another piece of evidence. I wrote down Catherine's phrases, Emily's responses, the purchases. I was building a case not just against Catherine, but against my daughter's illusion, because someday soon I knew the mask would crack. And when it did, I would be ready to show Emily the truth. The breaking point wasn't far. I could feel it. Every step Emily took deeper into Catherine's world was a step closer to collapse. And when that collapse came, I wouldn't let myself be the victim. Not anymore. The day I decided to cut Emily off completely, the sky outside was dark with rolling clouds. It felt almost poetic, as if nature itself was bracing for the storm I was about to unleash. I had already moved what was left of my savings into an account under my sole control. The credit cards she used were canceled, the bank notified. There would be no more withdrawals, no more quiet bleeding of my life's work into Catherine Aldridge's polished hands. I told myself it was for Emily's sake as much as mine. If she couldn't rely on my money, she would be forced to face reality. But I also knew the truth, it was for me too. I was tired of being treated like a bottomless fountain. I was tired of her contempt. The moment came sooner than I expected. Emily stormed into the kitchen that evening, her heels clicking furiously against the tile. She dropped her purse on the counter with a loud thud. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" I looked up from the sink, keeping my voice calm. "What do you mean?" "My card was declined. At the boutique." in front of Catherine. Her voice cracked with fury. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? I dried my hands, slowly meeting her gaze. Yes. I imagine it was very humiliating. And maybe that's exactly what you needed. Her eyes widened, her face twisting with disbelief. You did this. You cut me off. I nodded. I did. Because it has to stop, Emily. I won't let you drain me dry for her approval. Her hand slammed against the counter. You selfish, bitter woman. You've ruined everything. Catherine was watching, and I looked like a fool because of you. I flinched at the venom in her voice, but I didn't back down. Better a fool in her eyes than a fool for the rest of your life. Can't you see what she's doing to you? Her breathing came hard and fast, her chest rising and falling as though she were holding back tears or rage. You're jealous, she spat. Jealous because she sees in me what you never did. The words hit like a knife, but I didn't let them show. Emily, I've seen your worth since the day you were born. I've given everything to help you. But worth doesn't come from a woman who only values what you can give her. Worth comes from who you are. She shook her head violently, her voice trembling. No, you just want to keep me small, just like you, trapped in mediocrity, forgotten. I felt my hands tremble, gripping the edge of the sink. Emily, mediocrity isn't a prison. It's honesty. It's integrity. It's living a life without owing anyone your soul. Her face twisted with fury, and for the first time I saw something frightening in her eyes. A desperation so deep it bordered on madness. You've ruined my chance, she whispered. Do you know what Catherine will think of me now? Do you know what this means? Yes, I said softly. It means you'll finally see her for what she really is. If she abandons you because you can't pay your way into her world, then she was never your friend to begin with. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then Emily screamed a raw, anguished sound and swept her purse off the counter, sending its contents spilling across the floor. I hate you, she shouted, tears streaming down her face. I wish Dad were here instead of you. He would have believed in me. The words broke something inside me. My late husband's name twisted into a weapon thrown against me like a curse. I staggered back, clutching the edge of the counter, my heart shattering. She turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The house was silent again, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the silence after an earthquake, when the ground still trembles beneath your feet. I sank into a chair, burying my face in my hands. Her words echoed, each one carving into me, I hate you. He would have believed in me. For hours I sat in the kitchen staring at nothing. I thought of the girl I had raised, the little girl who used to sit in my lap and ask me to read her favorite stories. Where had she gone? Was she lost forever? Or was there still a piece of her buried beneath Catherine's influence? But as the night wore on, my sorrow hardened into something else. Resolve. She had crossed a line. She could rage, she could scream, she could throw every hateful word she could find. But I would not yield, because I wasn't just protecting my money anymore. I was protecting myself, my dignity, my survival. And somewhere deep down, I still believed I was protecting her, even if she would never see it that way. That night before I went to bed, I opened my notebook and wrote in bold letters the breaking point. She's spiraling. I have to be ready. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew it would be worse. And I knew I would need every ounce of strength I had left to face it. The morning after her outburst, the house felt like a battlefield, quiet but thick with the remnants of war. I went about my chores in silence, washing dishes, sweeping the floors, anything to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't linger on her words. I hate you. Dad would have believed in me. But by the time the afternoon sun streamed through the curtains, I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. Emily emerged from her room, her face pale, her eyes ringed with shadows. She didn't look like the triumphant young woman who used to gush about Catherine. She looked cornered, desperate. Mom, she said flatly, We need to talk. I set down my rag and nodded, bracing myself. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hands folded tightly, knuckles white. For a long moment she said nothing, just stared at me as though weighing her options. Then finally she spoke. "If you don't keep helping me, I'm done with you." The words hit harder than a scream. They were delivered cold, deliberate, like a verdict. I swallowed. Done with me, yes. Her jaw clenched. "I won't come home. I won't answer your calls. I'll cut you out of my life. You'll never see me again." My heart twisted. The girl I had carried in my arms, who once clung to me after nightmares, was now weaponizing her very presence. "You'd abandon your own mother," I whispered. She leaned forward, her voice low but venomous. "If you really loved me, you'd support me. You'd give me what I need. But you don't. You want to keep me small, pathetic, just like you. So yes, I'll walk away if that's what it takes." For a long time I just stared at her, my chest tight with grief. I had imagined many outcomes to our conflict, anger lies, even physical distance, but never this. Never a child threatening to erase her parent like a stain. Finally, I said softly, "If money is all that keeps you here, then you've already left me." Her face flickered as if she hadn't expected me to call her bluff, but she recovered quickly, her eyes narrowing. "Don't test me, Mom. Catherine believes in loyalty. If I tell her you're not supportive, she'll replace you." "I'll replace you." The words hung in the air like poison. I stood slowly, my knees trembling but my voice steady. "Emily, listen to yourself. You sound like a stranger. Do you even hear what you're saying? You're threatening your own mother to impress a woman who sees you as disposable." She shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly. "You don't know anything about her. She values me. She sees potential. She manipulates you." I cut in, my voice sharp. "She strings you along with praise so you'll keep giving. And now you're willing to sever your own blood ties for her approval." Her hands shook at her sides, her breath uneven. "If you won't help me, then don't expect me to stay." She stormed out the back door, the slam reverberating through the house. I stood there staring at the empty chair, my body numb. Hours passed. She didn't return until well after midnight, her makeup smeared, her eyes glassy. She smelled of perfume and wine, the scent of Catherine's world clinging to her like chains. She staggered into the kitchen, dropping her heels onto the floor. "Don't look at me like that," she muttered, catching my gaze. "I had to do it. Catherine needed me." I whispered, "Needed you, or used you?" She glared at me, then stumbled toward the stairs, mumbling under her breath, "You'll regret this. You'll see." When her door closed upstairs, I sank into a chair, my head in my hands. The threat lingered heavier than ever. She wasn't bluffing. She was prepared to cut me off, to sever our bond entirely if I didn't bend. But I couldn't bend. Not anymore. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I thought about the years I had spent raising her alone, the sacrifices, the dreams I had put aside. And now it had all come to this, a child who valued me only as a bank account. Still beneath the pain, something hardened in me. She thought she could scare me into submission. She thought her threats would keep me silent, obedient. But she underestimated me. I whispered into the dark, "How do you think they will react when I reveal that to everyone?" Because the truth was, I wasn't powerless. I had her receipts, her letters, her desperate promises to Catherine. And if she wanted to play this as war, then I would not go down quietly. The cracks began to show not long after Emily's threat. It was a Thursday evening when I first heard the whispers. I had gone to the market hoping to distract myself with the simple rhythm of choosing vegetables and chatting with familiar faces. But as I reached for a basket of apples, I caught the tail end of a conversation between two women by the bread aisle. "Poor thing," one said, lowering her voice. "All that effort and Catherine doesn't even remember her name half the time." Are you talking about Emily Whitmore? The other asked. My chest tightened. Yes. She's been following Catherine around like a shadow. Everyone says she's wasting her time. Catherine has proteges every season. Emily's just the latest. The words hit me like a stone to the ribs. I gripped the basket to steady myself, forcing my breath to stay even as I finished my shopping. My daughter wasn't being groomed for greatness, she was being paraded like an ornament discarded when the novelty wore off. When I got home, Emily was already there, twirling in front of the mirror in another expensive dress. Catherine's taking me to a gala in the city tomorrow, she said, her eyes shining. She told me I'm different from the rest. She said I have staying power. I bit back the urge to tell her what I'd overheard. Instead, I asked, "And what will you have to give this time?" Her smile faltered. "It's not like that, Mom. She believes in me." But I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. She wanted desperately to believe her own words. That weekend, she left for the city. I stayed behind, a storm of unease brewing in my chest. Late that night, as I sat at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an old colleague who sometimes worked at the same events Catherine attended. "Margaret, I saw Emily tonight. She looked lost." Catherine barely acknowledged her. "I thought you should know." My stomach dropped. The next morning, Emily returned. Her shoulders slumped, her makeup smudged. She didn't sparkle. She didn't glow. She looked hollow. "How was it?" I asked gently. Her jaw tightened. "Fine." But I knew it wasn't fine. Later, when she went to shower, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter. A message from Catherine flashed on the screen. "Emily, I appreciate your efforts, but I can't promise you a permanent place. Loyalty is valuable, but influence requires more than enthusiasm. I hope you understand." My chest tightened. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but the words burned into me. Catherine had confirmed what I feared: Emily wasn't special to her. She was replaceable. When Emily came back into the room, I handed her the phone. "Emily," I said softly, "she doesn't see you the way you think she does." Her face drained of color as she read the message. Then she looked at me with wild eyes. "You went through my phone. I didn't mean to," I said quickly. "It popped up." "But Emily, look at her words. She's not promising you anything. She's keeping you on a string, feeding you just enough to keep you desperate." Her lips trembled, but she shook her head violently. "No. You're twisting it. She just means I need to prove myself more. That's all. Emily," I whispered, reaching for her hand. "She's using you, just like the others said." She ripped her hand away. "The others. You've been listening to gossip now." "Not gossip. Truth." My voice trembled. "She doesn't care about you, Emily. She never did. And if you don't see it now, you'll see it when she discards you like all the rest." Her chest heaved, her eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. "Stop it. Stop trying to poison this for me. You don't want me to succeed, that's all. You never did." I stood, my heart aching. "I want you to succeed more than anything. But not like this. Not by selling yourself, not by letting someone strip you of everything that makes you you." Her hands clenched into fists. "You'll see," she whispered. "She won't throw me away. She promised." And with that, she stormed upstairs, her sobs muffled behind the slam of her door. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the phone still glowing with Catherine's cold words. My heart ached for Emily's blindness, but I also felt the stirrings of grim clarity. Catherine had already begun to cast her aside. And when the final blow came, when Emily's illusion shattered completely, I would be there. Not to gloat, not to say I told you so, but to catch the pieces of the daughter I had nearly lost. For now, though, all I could do was wait. Wait and prepare. Because the storm was coming, and it would break Emily in ways she never imagined. After that message on Emily's phone, I knew the tide was shifting. Catherine's words weren't just careless, they were intentional. She was softening Emily for the inevitable cut the way a predator toys with its prey before the final strike. I couldn't sit idly by anymore. The next morning, I opened my notebook, the same one where I'd been tracking every withdrawal, every purchase, every slip of truth. But this time, I didn't just write. I began to organize. Receipts went into envelopes labeled by date. Letters and drafts I'd copied from Emily's stash were neatly filed. Screenshots of her purchases, messages, and emails, evidence of every dollar she'd spent chasing Catherine's approval, were printed at the library and added to the growing pile. Piece by piece, I was building a case, not just against Catherine, but against the fantasy my daughter had woven so tightly around herself. At night, while Emily was out, I combed through bank statements highlighting each transaction that screamed of vanity: $800 at boutiques, $1 and $200 for a charity contribution, $2,000 for jewelry that now sat in velvet boxes she barely touched. Each highlighted line felt like a cut against my soul. That was food. That was rent. That was security. Gone. But I refused to let it be for nothing. The hardest part wasn't the work, it was keeping it hidden. Emily grew suspicious quickly. One evening, she caught me closing the file cabinet a little too quickly. "What's that?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing. "Just bills," I replied calmly. Her lips pressed tight, but she didn't push further. Not then. Still, I could feel her watching me more closely, her suspicion gnawing at the edges of our fragile peace. Then came the night Catherine herself gave me ammunition without realizing it. I had gone to the same market again, hoping for a moment of normalcy. But as fate would have it, Catherine was there too, standing by the wine display, her pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She didn't see me at first. She was speaking with another woman, one of her wealthy friends, no doubt. "Oh, Emily," Catherine said with a light laugh. "Sweet girl, but honestly, I don't expect her to last long. Too eager, too dependent. They always burn out when they give too much." My chest clenched. The other woman chuckled. "Well, at least she's been entertaining." "Indeed," Catherine replied smoothly. "But it's only a matter of time before I move on. They all blur together eventually." I gripped my basket, my hands trembling with rage. My daughter was not a person to Catherine. She was entertainment, a temporary pet. When Catherine spotted me a moment later, her face flickered with recognition. She offered a polite smile as if she hadn't just sentenced my child to irrelevance. "Margaret," she said. "Lovely to see you." I forced a stiff smile, nodding once before walking away, my heart pounding in my ears. That night, I added the memory to my growing arsenal of truth. I wrote every word Catherine had said, every detail of her tone and expression. Someday soon, Emily would hear it. But I knew words alone wouldn't sway her. Not from me. Not yet. So I prepared in silence. I began setting aside recordings, quietly saving voicemails where Emily mentioned Catherine's demands, copying receipts from my emails. I even considered hiring someone to document Catherine's pattern with other young women. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about survival. Survival for me, and maybe, just maybe, salvation for Emily. The turning point came one evening when Emily stumbled into the house, mascara streaking her cheeks. "She canceled on me," she whispered, collapsing into a chair. "After everything I've done, she just canceled." My heart ached. I wanted to rush to her, to hold her, to tell her she was worth more than Catherine's scraps. But I held back. She wasn't ready to hear it yet. Instead, I asked gently, "What reason did she give?" Emily's voice cracked. "She said she needed someone with more polish. That maybe I wasn't the right fit after all." Tears streamed down her face, her hands trembling as she buried them in her lap. I took a slow breath. The moment was coming, the moment when truth could pierce the illusion. But not yet. She was too raw, too fragile. If I pushed now, she'd only lash out again. So I waited, my arsenal hidden, my evidence ready, And as I watched her crumble at the table, whispering Catherine's name like a broken prayer, I made myself a promise. When the time came, I wouldn't just tell her. I would show her. I would hold up the mirror Catherine had crafted and force her to see the reflection for what it was, a pawn, disposable and forgotten. And then, maybe just, maybe she would finally understand what I had been trying to tell her all along. The night of the charity ball arrived like a thunderclap. Emily had begged to go even after Catherine's rejection weeks earlier. "She invited me again, Mom," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "She said she wants to give me another chance." I knew better. Catherine hadn't invited her out of kindness. She was dangling the bait one last time, watching to see how far Emily would crawl. I said nothing, only nodded. But inside, I was steady as steel. This was the night I had been preparing for. Emily dazzled in a silver gown, her hair pinned high. She looked radiant, but her eyes betrayed her, too bright, too desperate. I followed her into the ballroom, clutching the envelope of evidence I had gathered: letters, receipts, bank statements, all neatly organized. Tonight, Emily would see the truth whether she wanted to or not. The ballroom glowed with chandeliers, music swirling through the air as couples waltzed. Waiters glided by with champagne, laughter rang against polished marble. And at the center of it all stood Catherine Aldridge, regal as ever, draped in emerald silk. She greeted guests with a smile that was both warm and distant, the practiced charm of someone who had mastered the art of holding court. When she spotted Emily, her smile flickered, momentary recognition tinged with boredom. But Emily didn't see it. She rushed forward, beaming like a child seeking her mother's approval. "Catherine," she gushed, clasping her hands. "Thank you for inviting me." Catherine's lips curved politely. "Emily, how lovely to see you." Lovely, the kind of word one uses for a flower arrangement. Disposable. I stood a few steps away, my envelope clutched tightly. Throughout the evening, Emily hovered near Catherine, laughing at her jokes, fetching her drinks, introducing herself to anyone Catherine spoke to. She was eager, over-eager, desperate to prove her worth. But I watched closely, and I saw what Emily refused to see: the way Catherine's gaze slid past her, the faint sighs when she clung too tightly, the polite but dismissive nods. To Catherine, Emily was a shadow. Nothing more. Then came the moment. During the dinner, the auctioneer announced the start of bidding for a scholarship fund. Guests raised their paddles with practiced ease. $2,000, $3,000, $1,000. Emily's hand twitched toward her paddle but froze. She glanced at me nervously. For the first time, she had no money to throw into the fire. Catherine noticed. Her lips curved, the faintest smirk. Not joining in, Emily's cheeks flushed. I'm saving my resources for something more significant." A ripple of polite laughter spread around the table. My daughter shrank in her seat. That was it. That was the crack. I stood, my voice cutting through the noise. "Perhaps we should talk about resources, Catherine, about where they've been coming from." The table fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Emily's face drained of color. "Mom, sit down," she hissed. But I didn't. I opened the envelope and spread the papers across the table: bank statements, receipts, letters. Every dollar Emily has spent here, every so-called donation, every dress, every gift, it all came from me. From the savings I worked 30 years to build. She didn't give you her loyalty. She gave you my sacrifice. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Catherine's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. "Margaret," she said smoothly, "this isn't the time." "Oh, but it is." I cut in, my voice trembling with fury. "Because you've been feeding her illusions, telling her she's special, encouraging her to bleed her family dry so she could buy her way into your circle. And for what? To be discarded when you were done with her?" Emily shook her head, violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. Stop it, Mom. You're humiliating me. No, Emily, I said softly but firmly. She's humiliating you. Every smile, every compliment, every invitation, it was a leash, and you were too blinded to see it. Catherine's mask cracked then just slightly. Her eyes turned cold, her voice sharp. Emily, perhaps it's best if you take some time away. I value loyalty, but I don't tolerate chaos. Chaos. The word dropped like a blade. Emily's face crumpled. In that moment, she saw it, the truth she had fought so hard to deny. Catherine wasn't her savior. She wasn't her mentor. She was her executioner, cutting her loose with a single sentence. I gathered the papers back into my envelope and looked at Catherine one last time. You should be ashamed. Using young women like pawns in your games. One day they'll all see you for what you are. The room buzzed with whispers, eyes darting between Catherine and Emily. But I no longer cared about their judgment. Emily stood slowly, her body trembling, her tears shining under the chandelier. Catherine, she whispered, her voice breaking. But Catherine had already turned away, greeting another guest with that same polished smile. The silence around us was deafening. Emily swayed on her feet, then turned and fled the room, her sobs echoing down the marble hall. I followed her, my heart torn between anger and sorrow. I found her outside, collapsed on the steps, her makeup streaked, her hands covering her face. She doesn't care, Emily sobbed. She never cared. I knelt beside her, my hand resting gently on her shoulder. No, sweetheart. She never did. But I do. I always have. For the first time in months, she leaned into me, her body shaking with grief. And though my heart was broken, I held her tightly, knowing the worst of the storm had finally passed. The night after the charity ball was the quietest I had ever known in my house. No clattering of heels on the floorboards, no hum of Emily's laughter rehearsed for Catherine's approval, no triumphant shouts about being noticed. Just silence, heavy, raw, aching. Emily didn't speak to me for 2 days. She stayed locked in her room, curtains drawn, phone turned off. I heard muffled sobs at night, whispers of her broken heart, but she wouldn't let me in. And I didn't force it. Sometimes grief has to crack open before healing can begin. On the third morning, she emerged. Her hair was unbrushed, her face pale, her once sparkling eyes dulled. She looked so young again, like the girl I once held after nightmares too small to fight her demons alone. Mom, she whispered, her voice trembling. You were right. The words were soft, fragile, but they pierced me deeper than any insult she'd hurled before. She dropped me. Emily continued, tears welling in her eyes. Just like you said. One minute she was smiling, the next I was nothing, like I never mattered. I reached for her hand across the table. She didn't pull away this time. Oh, Emily, I whispered. You always mattered. Just not to her. You mattered to me. Every day of your life. The dam broke. She sobbed, her shoulders shaking as she buried her face in her hands, and I held her, stroking her hair, letting her grief pour out. It wasn't forgiveness yet. Not for me, not for her. But it was something. A beginning. In the weeks that followed, the changes were slow, tentative. Emily stopped going to Catherine's events. She returned the dress rentals she could, sold some of the jewelry she'd bought. The money barely scratched the surface of what she owed me, but I didn't care about repayment. What mattered was that she was trying. One afternoon, I found her in the living room sorting through the shoebox of Catherine's letters. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I can't believe I let her do this to me. I can't believe I let myself. I sat beside her. She didn't do it alone, Emily. You wanted to believe. And she knew that. She fed your hunger. That's how people like her work. Emily nodded slowly, pressing the letters back into the box. I feel so stupid. I squeezed her hand. Being used doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. The important thing is learning from it. For the first time in months, she smiled, a small, broken smile, but real. Still, the damage between us lingered. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, her old words echoed in my mind. I hate you. You're jealous. Dad would have believed in me. Wounds like that don't vanish overnight. But there were new words now, too. Softer ones. You were right. I'm sorry. I see it now. Those words stitched slowly over the old scars. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, she said quietly. I kissed the top of her head. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, Emily. It's about choosing to love despite the hurt. And I'll always choose to love you. Her tears wet my sleeve, but I didn't mind. They were tears of truth this time, not rage. As for Catherine, she moved on quickly, just as I knew she would. Within weeks, another young woman appeared at her side, radiant and eager. I saw them once passing by in town, and for a fleeting moment Catherine's eyes met mine. Her smile was as polished as ever, but I saw something behind it, a flicker of recognition, maybe even respect. She knew I had beaten her game, and though she would never admit it, I carried that small victory like a shield. Now, months later, Emily is still rebuilding. She's taken a job at a local boutique, earning her own money for the first time in years. It isn't glamorous. It isn't Catherine's world. But it's real. And sometimes I see glimpses of the daughter I thought I had lost, the laughter, the warmth, the spark that had been buried under ambition and manipulation. Our relationship isn't perfect. It may never be. But it's honest now. And that, more than anything, is what I fought for. Because in the end, this wasn't just a battle between me and Catherine. It wasn't even just about Emily's betrayal. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my worth, my voice. And when I look back at the long nights of doubt, the humiliation at the gala, the pain of hearing my own child threaten to erase me, I realize something powerful. I didn't just survive. I stood my ground. And in standing, I showed Emily the strength she had forgotten I carried. So if you're listening now, know this: you are stronger than the betrayals you've endured. You are more than the illusions others sell you. And no matter how much someone tries to strip you of your worth, you can choose to stand, to fight, to reclaim it. Have you ever been in a situation like this? If you were in this situation, would you forgive or take revenge? Comment below to let us know. And remember, your story, your truth matters.